It's a tad bit dark right now, but like it was 3 months ago when I started JB Hunt on my very first day, I'm here right before the sun comes up, and literally the sun is right there on the horizon about to come up. As a matter of fact, you know what? Might as well just turn around and show you. It's right there. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So the sun's going to be coming up very soon, and there's probably going to be a weird shadow on my face, but we'll see what happens. Now, I know I'm changing. That's the reason why I've changed my angle. Normally the camera's over here, so it's looking more out the window. But instead, you get to see behind me. I went out this week, and it was actually a good week. I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that I spoke to the manager over my manager, and he talked to the planners about trying to give me more of the kind of loads that I like to run, or if it is purely coincidental. I don't know. But I don't want to jinx anything. Where's some wood? Because I would knock on some wood. I mean, this is a book. It's not really wood, but it's made of wood, so maybe that will count, hopefully. But I don't want to jinx it. I had a good week. There was really nothing that caught me off guard. There was nothing that really stood out as being overly bad. And for that reason, Rand McNally miles. I drove 2,814.2 miles, and the company says, and paid me for 2,603 miles. So I gave up 211 miles. All things considered, it should be a good week because I had some good runs. Let me tell you how it went. As opposed to the past when I started at midnight, and this may be part of the reason why it was a good week. I was told by my first manager, the one that was the new hire manager, I should not start before midnight. I don't know why that is. I talked to my manager, and he said, you can start early as long as you can satisfy your load. So as long as you are getting to your loads on time and you're not just sitting there for hours and hours, I don't mind when you start. And I'm like, cool. So I set my driver ready time, DRT, for 10:30 p.m. on Saturday night. Now I got here, I did the recording of the last episode of Valley Docked, and then I went to sleep. And I got up at 10:30. I got up at 9:45, and I headed out by 10:30. Now, actually, I take that back. It was actually 10 because I didn't have to. I set it for 10:30, but I was up and knew that I wasn't going to be able to go back to sleep. So I was like, you know what? I might as well just start early and just do it. So I got out of there at 10. And I went to the Atlanta rail yard as opposed to Fairburn, which is right around the corner from here. And I got there it was actually lot 12. It wasn't the regular Atlanta rail yards. I started at lot 12, which is basically like if the Atlanta rail yard is here, you have to go up Marietta, West Marietta, whatever, and then go down a couple of ways. You have to go up, go over, and then back down into the Atlanta rail yard. Instead of that, you don't do the last two turns. You just stop right there, which is basically across the railroad lines over there. Not exactly. You can look at it from the air. If you go to Google Maps, just do a search for Atlanta rail line, and then once you're close, do a search for Atlanta rail line lot 12, and it will show you exactly where it is. But I've been there before. I've been there a couple of times, I think, and it was a very, very easy just pick up and get out of there. The only thing was there was no bill of lading in the bill of lading box, so I got to use my handy dandy printer, which you can see right up over top of my laptop. It's right up there on top. I think you can see that. Let me turn on the screen. Let's see. Yeah, it's up there. Right there. You can see it right above my laptop, which is rendering my drive because I record my drives every single day. If you have any interest in seeing my drives, I do have a playlist that I basically started on a different channel that I've had for a long time, and I can link that playlist. If you have an interest and you ask me down the comments, I will link the playlist. But if you're not interested in seeing the drives, it doesn't matter. It has the date of my drive on there. So if you hear what I'm talking about and where I'm going and what I'm doing. And you hear me every single day tell you where I shut down. So if you're watching a particular episode and you're like, you know what, I wonder where that was or what he was talking about in that situation, you can just look at the description. It will say it was recorded like some odd many days before. Like this episode was recorded basically 144 days before it's airing. Technically, that's what it's going to say in the comments, or the description. But it was actually recorded 142 because I'm doing this at the end of my Friday. I work today, but I have a meeting with my manager at 8, and it is right now 7:07. So, I can't have the meeting with him until I come in. This is a 90-day review till he comes in. And then once he comes in, he's going to have me sit there for a bit while he does his morning routine and checks on the team. So anyway, I got out of there. The printer, I tell you, is such a good investment. It really is. It has more than paid for itself, in my opinion, because if I would have to go to like a truck stop and print it out, and it was like $2 a page or whatever, you could probably do it, and it would have been a total of maybe $30 as of right now. But considering I've been doing this driving for JB Hunt for about 2.5 months now, and I have printed out probably 15 pages, it's going to add up real quick. And that is a black and white laser printer that is technically Wi-Fi, but I run the Wi-Fi service on my phone, so I can actually connect up to that via Wi-Fi, and it allows me to print up. I wanted to get one that was Bluetooth, but the Wi-Fi works just fine if you run the printer service on your phone. And I got it down to a science now, so it's great. Anyway, so I got a fuel on the way to the Amazon, because it was the Amazon on Deep Forest, and I arrived at 3:45 a.m. Now, if you watched the last episode, you'll remember that there was a lady in the office Thursday morning who refused to give me an empty. She just was like, "No, I can't give you an empty until 6 a.m." And I was like, "You're allowed to give me an empty in exchange for a loaded, but you can't give me an empty if I ask for one." She just said, "No, I can't give you an empty until 6 a.m. I'm not telling you I can't give you one. I just can't give it to you until 6 a.m. I'm like, "Look, I'm here at 3:45. And she's like, "Yeah, so wait until 6. I'm like, "I don't want to do this, because anyway. She annoys the crap out of me. So later that day, actually, I sent a message to the office and said, "There's a lady there twice now. She has been the only employee that does not give you an empty. Can you email Amazon and maybe they can educate her so that way she will not continue to be the only person that never lets me take an empty out when I drop off a trailer." Anyway, I was mad. I tell you what, I called the office nonstop and nobody answered. And I don't know if it was because it was Sunday morning, but it was like nonstop until after 5 a.m. Then one person came in. He's been very helpful in the past. I don't want to name him. But I said, can you give me a load? I'm not a planner. In the past, he's never had a problem giving me something. I'm like, "Are you sure you can't give me anything?" He's like, "Nope." I'm like, because I've been here for over an hour. I've been here for an hour and 15 minutes, and they refused to give me an empty, so I got to find an empty someplace. And in the meantime, I've been waiting here just trying to get a load. And I don't know if it was because that means that if it's over an hour, I'm on the clock being detained, and they don't want that. I don't know. This is speculation. If you've been waiting for an hour, try to get him something. Or if it's less than an hour, let him wait until an hour is up, because he doesn't technically, the employee does not get paid until you start to hit that 1 hour mark, unless it's a live load, and then it's an hour and a half. Anyway, I told him, I said, that sucks. They won't give me an empty, and they do have them. And I've been here for an hour and 15 minutes. He said, "All right, hold on a second. Let me see what I can get for you." I was very, very appreciative of him. And I was asking for a load out of the same yard, because there's no empties. Is there something available? And he actually said there wasn't anything. But the planners come in at 6 a.m. and I could wait and talk to one of them. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And honestly, he sent me a location. He says, "Well, why don't you go pick up an empty and then contact us and let us know." And he sent me a location for an empty. The problem I was running into is that by the time I got off the phone with him, it was 5:15. Sending me 20 minutes away to get an empty would mean it's 5:35 by the time I get there. And that is if they happen to have any empties. not all locations do give out empties. So they sent me to one Amazon location which has a sign up, we do not give out empties. And I know a few of those other places in that area do not give empties either. So I thought about just sitting there with my arms folded on the clock until 6 a.m. until they could give me an empty. But then the lady at the office was like, well, the clerk's supposed to come in at 6, but she comes in when she comes in. And so you may be here after that. And I'm like, no, that's the reality. So I thought about sitting there with my arms folded and forcing them to just give me an empty. But then I thought about it and said, you know what? It would be nice to have another location here where I can pull an empty as opposed to going to the Walmart DC, because the first time I went there, they could give me an empty. The last time I went there, and I've only been there twice, they said, we really don't have an empty, but I could probably give you this one. We're not supposed to give out empties right now. I can give you this one. And that's the only one. I'm like, that's the only one I need. Anyway, I thought about just staying on the clock, but whatever. So at 5:17, they did send me a load. And this is one of those situations where I mentioned in the past where it was picking up a container from the Target in Midway and taking it to West Rock in Dublin. And I had asked the office, do I even need to grab an empty? Because if I'm picking up a load there, do they need to have an empty? He says, yes, go get an empty. You need to have an empty. So I was like, all right, fine. So I went ahead and said, you know what? I don't want to sit here since I was north of Savannah, and I was going to have to go like 20 minutes south of Savannah on 95. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on over there, try to pick up that empty. And if not, I'll just go right around the corner to that Walmart and see if they'll give me one, and then head down there. So when I got to, it was a Home Depot, they said, we don't give out empties here. I'm like, great. And so I contacted the office to send a message and said, they don't give out empties at this Home Depot. Do I really need to have one? And I got someone else, not the person I spoke to before. He says, you're picking up a load there. No, you don't have to get an empty. Just go there and pick up the load. I'm like, thank you. So whoever that was, went ahead and dispatched me. So I was like, awesome. I don't have to have an empty, message them, and then have them dispatch the load, because the first guy who gave me the load did not hit dispatch on it. So I was sitting there having to find an empty. But this next guy was like, no, just go and pick it up. I was like, awesome. So at least I know now the Home Depot will not give out an empty. That was my concern. That's the reason why I didn't want to go there, because what if they didn't give me an empty? Am I supposed to go back at Amazon and say, now give me my empty? You know, anyway, I figured that lady probably wouldn't give them to me if I left the yard. Anyway, who knows? I don't know, because it wasn't necessary for me to. So anyway, I went down to Midway, and I asked the office, I basically asked the office for the load. They had no problem giving me the load, and I picked up one of the heaviest containers so far, which is 43,100 pounds. Now, I'll tell you what I normally try to do is, if I know where the Catskills are, I'm going to try to find a truck stop that's on the right-hand side. I'm going to pull out, that way I can go through the Catskills and enter right back and enter on the right. And there were no truck stops going north on 95 and going west on 16 before the Scales, which is just before exit 143, Ellabelle. And I was being stubborn about it, saying, you know what, I'm going to find one, and I'm going to do it. Well, I almost shot myself in the foot. I almost got myself caught, because I was looking for it, and I was like, that Quick Trip is probably not going to be a truck stop Quick Trip, but it ended up being, and that was the exit right before. I think it was the exit before or the exit before that. But I was looking at it saying, okay, well, I'll get it the next one. And then I was like, yikes, there is no that thing. And all of a sudden it says, all trucks get in the right-hand lane, way station in 2 miles. I'm like, yikes, I am having to do this. And so I was concerned. I was thinking, great, I'm going to run over the sensor. It's going to show that I'm overweight, and it's going to pull me in, and I'm going to get a citation for it. Luckily, it said bypass. So naturally, since it's policy that you're supposed to scale, and technically that was the only scale I was going to run into before I got to West Rock, I was wondering, and I was wondering if, since the truck stop looked closed, I'm sorry, not the truck stop, the weigh station looked closed, was it closed and saying, sure, pass on by, bypass? Or was it saying, no, we're here, even though we look closed, and you scaled just fine? So I decided I was going to stop at the truck stop right on the other side of the weigh station and scale. And I scaled at $11,820 on the steers, $33,580 on the drives, and $33,560 on the trailer. So a total of $48,960. So I ended up being legal when I went over the scales. So it did not answer my question. I was safe. I was fine. So if I was pulled in, they would have released me and I would have been fine. But that was something that I was like, you know what? That's one of those learning experiences for me. I'm not going to be stubborn and saying, I'm going to find a truck stop on the right-hand side. How hard is it to pull off, drive over to the left-hand side if it saves you potentially getting a citation? What is that going to save? A minute? Don't be stubborn and do it. Drive, get to that traffic light as opposed to turning right on red or whatever. Wait for the light, turn left, go over there, do the thing, pull out, do the scale, and don't risk it. That was one of those things where as soon as I saw it say get in the right hand lane, I'm like, oh no, and my heart started racing. I was like, because before that I was just nice and chill. I was just totally chill, listening to my audiobook, and was just like, everything's great. But as soon as I started getting down that way, I was like, yikes, I'm going to be in trouble. Anyway, got to West Rock, and they actually, I was dropping off a trailer, but they had me pick up a trailer there and head out. Now, the app does not give you a way to drop a trailer and say dispatch the load without putting an empty in there. The office won't dispatch you until you say that you have an empty and put something in the system. So I have to pick a random trailer there, and they do have a cool system there that has you put a little blue flag on the electrical input on the front of the trailer. If that is empty, when you drop off it empty, you put the little thing on there. But none of the trailers around where I dropped the trailer were empty. So just like I did the last time, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put something in there. It's probably going to be loaded or whatever. I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. I don't care. And it's their dumb policy on why you have to have an empty in the system. I can't just say, dispatch me, and they'll do it. So, and if so, the office, it was in the middle of I was middle of the morning. I didn't want to pest the office. Sometimes they get a little bogged down with procedure and stuff they're doing. So sometimes it takes a little while. I'm like, yeah, I want to risk it. In case I'm sitting there waiting forever. I really wanted to get back to the office, or I really wanted to get to where I was going, the truck stop, so I could try to get in and out of the city as quick as possible. But it ended up being that I wasn't going to be able to. I wasn't going to be able to get into the city because by the time I scaled, because it was 41,500 pounds, it scaled just fine. I ended up getting to about an hour and 10 minutes left on my clock right as I was passing exit 201. And I was like, you know what? If I run, right now it says that Fairburn, I would have to stop at Palmetto, which would make it even later. Fairburn was at best case scenario an hour and 5 minutes away. Palmetto's a few minutes behind it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get caught. I'm going to have to stop at that truck stop right there at the same exit that charges $20 per, or I'm going to have to pull over on the side of the road or something like that, which would not go over very well if I am getting close to Palmetto. They're going to say, wait a minute, who is this truck, this JB Hunt truck that is stopped on the side of the interstate right here when you're that close? Someone wasn't watching their clock. They're going to know instantly. And I'm not going to be that guy. So I stopped at exit 201. On my Tuesday, I was concerned about the pre-assigned load because it was the Lowe's in Bessemer, Alabama again. The last time I went there was the previous week on Sunday. And so I called the office and said, hey, I was there last week and was told they don't even open till 5. I would be arriving there, their time, at like 2:30 a.m. And they wouldn't even open until like 5 o'clock. So is this the right job? And they said, when did you go there? And I said, last Sunday. I didn't know if it was holiday hours or not. And she looked at it and says, I have that they're a 24/7 location. I said, oh, because I was there on Monday. And she says, hold on a second. And she looked it up and said, okay, they did have special holiday hours that started where they opened at 5 a.m. I'm like, oh, so that's not a normal thing. She says, it's not a normal thing at all. It's 24/7. So I was like, excellent. So I went ahead and dropped off and picked up in the same place. And I got out of there. And that was at Fairburn. And I was out of Fairburn by 11 p.m. And I was on my way because I got up and out by 9:45 p.m. Nice being able to back it up. So I got there. It was torrential downpour, bad rain. But still, I was able to get there just fine. Now, I'll tell you this. There was a bad storm going across just north in Kentucky. It was actually starting at Ohio. It was going over. If you're curious as to what the weather was, look at the Ryan Hall Y'all YouTube channel for what he released at the early part of January in 2025. You'll see all about the bad weather, the storm that went right across from like Ohio. It started, I think, in Nebraska. It went through Missouri. It went over Kentucky, Ohio, ended in New Jersey. But it froze and put like 5-6 inches of snow into like Kentucky, which is crazy. But it did not come down as far as Tennessee. So I was expecting to be sent up there to Tennessee. It was a torrential downpour though where I was, because the temperature was above freezing. It was like 38, 40, something like that. But still it was cold. But it wasn't anything like, now I'll tell you this, next week there's going to be a bad storm, because tonight I'm done for the day. I'm going to, like 24 hours from now, Atlanta's supposed to be either ice or snow or sleet. A combination of icy snow mix. And so when I leave today, I'm going to go to my place, do what I need to. I have a dentist appointment today at 3, and then I'm going to go see my family for the next 2 days until I have to start up here. And the storm's supposed to come in tomorrow and be bad all tomorrow, but I'm not supposed to be driving in here for work again until the day after. So hopefully I'll miss all that and it won't be an issue, because I would love to be able to be in the snow with my family and have it not be an issue. Let's hope. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so let me not get distracted here. I got to the Target in Bessemer at 2:15 a.m. and was glad to see, it was first of all the same guy working as the guard. He recognized me and says, hey, didn't you come here recently? I said, yep, I was here last week when you had holiday hours at 5. Tell me you're open now. He says, yep, we're open now. But yeah, we had the holiday hours till 5. Didn't open till 5. I was like, okay, well, that threw me. Because I was told you were a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week location. He's like, yep, we are. So I was able to go in there and get it. I had a pre-assignment to just drop off my empty at the Austell yard. So I was like, okay, I can do that. No problem. So anyway, I picked up and I dropped off at Austell, and I was pre-assigned to go to Lake City, Georgia, where I've been to before. I think it's a Lowe's, if memory serves. Anyway, so I headed out of Austell, went down 75. There was a huge crash. Just slowed traffic down, which when I was heading out of Austell, it even said on the overhead sign, all lanes blocked. Sometimes they're a little behind. So I said 75 south, all lanes blocked. I'm going to chance it because I have the hours. I should have driven on 285 around to 675 and then just driven south there, which is really what my instinct was, but I took 75 anyway and got caught in about an hour's worth of traffic just sitting there creeping along. So anyway, got out of there and ended up shutting down at the Loves in Tifton for the night, and realized at that point that I was not paid. The dropping off my load in Austell was not paid. Normally what will happen is it will show up as deadheading or empty miles or something like that. If you have an empty, it will say empty miles. Deadhead is if you're a bobtail going to a location. But it did not have those miles at all going from Bessemer, Alabama over to pick up the load going to Garden City. So I had to contact the office, and my manager was like, I don't have any record of this. I'm like, yeah, I know. So I forwarded him the receipt that came from the rail yard when I dropped off my empty. And I said, this matches my loaded call. So you can see I did have an empty. I did pull it there, and I did in-gate it over at Austell. And he confirmed that and made sure I was paid for it, which is awesome. So anyway, on my Wednesday, I got up, and it was actually Home Depot, not Lowe's. Sorry if you own stock in it. I used to own stock in Home Depot. It was given to me. Then I sold it when I was in college. Anyway, I got down there. It was only about an hour away. And I was looking for an empty in their lot. And they had a lot of empty hazmat trailers. Now, normally, all I would have to do is go over there and pull some stickers. Not an issue. Except for the fact that for whatever reason, all of the stickers on all of the trailers were like up at the top. Like 10 feet up. I don't have a ladder over here. And I can't like scale up the side of the trailer, nor am I going to climb up on top and then hang over the side of it and try to reach down. But they were so high, I would have no way of pulling those stickers. So I went hunting for an empty in their lot, finally found one, but it was full of all these like wood shavings, wood chips, and it was like splinters of wood and stuff. And it was just like, why would they do that? It was Home Depot, so they probably had a wood delivery, which I would have thought would have come in on a flatbed. Usually they do, but it had like all these shards in there, and I was like, you know what? I can't believe you did this to me. So I had to go sweep it out, and when I swept everything to the very, very back, I looked at it and said, there were so many wood chips, so many like big, huge things. I would literally have no place to put it. If I could load it up in here in the back of in the back of my sleeper here, or even in the passenger side seat, I would do that. But I would have no way to store all of it, even to get it over someplace. And I could leave it in the back and then find someplace. But that's kind of ridiculous, considering that they intentionally left it that dirty. And so I looked out there and I said, please let there be other people that just swept it right out here. And I realized that there was a lot of that. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing. This is obviously something that they're very aware of. So I went ahead and swept it on out into the back. And because the trailer was backed up over the edge into the grass, I swept it right up into the grass, right over onto the side of the grass with a whole bunch of other junk out there. So anyway, felt bad about it, but still. I was assigned to pick up at a Target in Tifton, so I was going to drop my empty off there, and then to take it to West Rock again. West Rock was my place this week of delivering my trailers. Now, anytime you pick up and you drop off and you don't go by the rail yard, you actually have a drop off and pickup fee. So on my Monday, it was good for that, because, picking up and dropping off. And my Wednesday was the same thing. Dropped off in Garden City, picked up in Tifton, dropped off in West Rock. It was a great run. And then I had a drop in at the Atlanta Rail Yard. And by the time I got to the Atlanta Rail Yard, it was like 6 a.m. And I was like, you know what? My GPS is, my Waze GPS, which is not a truck route, is routing me through the city. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. My company GPS was routing me an extra hour out of the way, telling me to get off at exit 205 for whatever reason and to wiggle around on back roads going up toward I'm like, I'm not going to do that. You're stupid. I'm just going to stay on the interstate because right now it's clear. So I went ahead on up and decided, instead of going 285 around, I'm going to Atlanta. I can legitimately go straight up to Hamilton Mill, turn left, turn right on Huff, turn left on Marietta, then West Marietta, and go into the yard. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that today and see what happens. And so I did, and it played out. There was no traffic. When I left the Atlanta Rail Yard before, I had looked at Huff, because that was the one thing is if that turn is too hard, making that right turn onto Huff, then I wouldn't be able to do that if there was any traffic. But Huff, it actually has like a little turn lane that starts up, and it's perfectly wide for you to make the turn, because they know trucks are going to do that. So I was like, perfect. So now I went ahead and got there, and it was fine. That was the first day, by the way, that since the holidays, the schools were back in, people were returning to work that might have been working at home or taking time off. And so there was bound to be traffic that day. But I got through that at the 6 a.m. time. I got to the Atlanta Yard, and I was fully ready to run into traffic coming out of the city, wherever that pre-assignment was, because there was a pre-assignment that came up while I was driving there. And it ended up being to the Amazon in Garden City again. So I picked up a container, and the front right pin on the container was apparently not pulled all the way out. So when the person was able to take the container off, the pin was still in position. So when they dropped the container on there, it was put on that pin. There was no way for me to release it. I did try with my hammer, But I realized real quick, as soon as I looked at it, I was like, wait a minute, I can't hit this with a hammer and get it to go in. And so I looked at it and said, I'm going to just have to find one of those little cranes. So I found a crane, and a guy there lifted it up. He lifted it up and allowed me to pull my pin out, and then he put it back on there, and I was able to get out of there. Now, I was able to, even with that adjustment, get out of the yard by 6:45, and I said to myself, you know what? It is going to be rush hour going into the city, but I don't know what traffic is going to be like exiting the city. When I was in training, my trainer told me, don't plan to be leaving Atlanta at 5 a.m. is probably okay, but don't plan to leave Atlanta and expect there to be a clear way out of the city until like after about 5 a.m. But I decided I wanted to chance it and try it. Here it is, 6:45 a.m. I left Atlanta Rail Yard, 6:45 a.m., and it was fine. There was no traffic, no slowdowns or anything like that affected me to Hamilton Mill at 75, and all the way south, 75, straight out of the city. It was smooth sailing. Highway, interstate speeds, all the way down. No traffic that day, which was great. Normally there's some sort of a traffic jam going on S75 South that I hate, but that was not the case. So I was able to drop off my container, pick up my container, and get straight out of the city. I was happy as a clam. And I was able to make it all the way to the Pilot in Ellabelle, Georgia, which happened to be the same place I stopped at on Christmas morning where I made the phone call to my family. And it ends up being that they had the parking spot available, because there was a lot of parking spots available when I got there. The parking spot available that I was parked in 2 weeks earlier when I made that phone call to my family. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to stop there just for old time's sake. And I had like 22 minutes left on my daily clock on my non-drive hour. And then I had additional 12 minutes left on my drive clock when I got there. I had made 4 stops that day. And I had driven 620 miles. That's a good day. So I stopped at that Pilot in Ellabelle, was able to take a shower, all that kind of stuff, using my shower power from last month, which is awesome. So it was only 20, when I got up on my yesterday, it was only 20 miles to Garden City. So I got over there and I was hoping and praying that same woman was not going to be there. Ended up being 3 employees there. One of them is a security guard that I ran into, I think the last time I was there, and he recognized me and said, hey, weren't you the guy that was here the last day I worked? I said, I'm not sure the last day you worked, but I definitely have seen you here before. And it was last week, I believe. He said, yeah, I remember you. I'm like, yeah, I remember you too. And I knew he gave me an empty. And the other two employees were guards, but they were like the guards that work in the shack. They weren't like security guards that work security at the facility at Amazon. And so I mentioned to them, I said, where can I grab an empty? And he told me, and I was like, okay, awesome. And I said, you know what? There's been this lady, and I described her. And I said, she's not been giving me empties. I've been here twice. I told her, Sunday and there on Thursday. And they said, what? And I said, yeah, she wouldn't give me an empty. And were you coming here for an empty, or were you dropping off a load? I said, I was dropping off a load both times. And they're like, yeah, she's supposed to. Who is this? I described her, and they instantly said, oh, we know who she is. And they told me her name. And I was like, okay, well, at least they know her. And I said, yeah, she might need a talking to or something to understand what's going on. And they said, okay, we'll make sure that she is informed. I'm like, thank you so much. That's going to make it so much easier for me. Anyway, I was also pre-assigned to take my empty to Austell Rail Yard again. I was not, it was like, it's funny because my first day I had a lot of good stops. My second day, it was like go to rail yards and stuff where you don't get a drop fee. My Wednesday was a lot of stops. My Thursday was going to be like, you only get the 1 stop fee and then go to the Austell Rail Yard. But I did not mind it because I had so many of the stop fees from the other 2 days. So it's like a day of stop fees, a day of like only 1, day of stop fees, day of only 1. So I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna complain about it. It'll be all right. I did get to Austell around 2:30 or so, 2:30, 2:45 a.m., something like that, and it was not bad because that was going to get me out of Atlanta well before traffic. And I tell you, it was interesting because when I got to that particular Amazon, they had a whole bunch of loaded trailers in the yard. So he was like, yeah, just find an empty and then tell me what it is. And that's the same thing you told me last time. And I went and had to hunt one because they were almost all the ones I found were full. But I did find one, and it did not look like, normally the intermodal containers, like the sidewalls, look like a stair step. And I know why they do that. It's so that way because they stack multiple different containers, it makes it stronger. It has more metal standing upright with that crinkle cut design. So that way it's more surface area for it to stand up. But this one was straight sidewall. So at first glance, I thought it was a dry van. I went around to the back and I saw that it was, and from the back, I was like, oh, okay, well, here's a container, here's a chassis. And then when I went around to the front and was looking for it, I'm like, where is that container? Where's the container? And I didn't see it. So I stopped and I said, I know it was right here. Because it was two trailers backed up. And when I backed mine in, I was like, oh, well, here's one right here. And I checked the back, it was empty. But ended up being that I was very puzzled about that. But ended up being that it looked like a dry van, but because it was a smooth sidewall. So ended up not being an issue. When I went back over there and was prepared, because it said top lift only, and it was a chassis and container. So I was like, well, it's intermodal. Either it doesn't say intermodal on the side. I knew it was. It just said JB Hunt. So anyway, I grabbed that one and went over to the guard, and it was the same guard, and I said, you need me to open it up? He said, yeah, I do. And I said, I actually use resonance to hear if a container is empty or not. And he said, what do you mean? The sound? I said, yeah. And I took a fist and I banged on the side, on the back of the trailer, and you hear it go boom. You hear it, empty sound travel all the way through. I said, if it's full, it dies real quick. It doesn't rattle this way. If it's empty, you could bang it, or if it's just got a little bit in the nose, and then you don't know if it's empty or not. But most of the time, you can bang on the side of a trailer and you can hear the resonance, and you can tell if it's empty or if it's full. So anyway, I told him that. He says, I've heard of that, thumping the side and seeing what happens anyway. He thought that was kind of cool. So anyway, I got to Austell, dropped off my container, and I was pre-assigned Lennox Industries in Orangeburg, South Carolina. There was no bill of lading, so I ended up using my handy-dandy printer up there again, and got out of there before traffic. But I did run into a little bit of traffic in Columbia, South Carolina, mainly because and my company GPS was telling me to take South Augusta Road, which it cuts the corner of going 20 to 26. Is it 20 to 26? I think it is. Yeah. It cuts off. It's 20 to 26, but it cuts the corner by basically, as opposed to going here and then down, or here and then down, it cuts the corner down through there. But I found that sometimes the back roads are slower because it takes more, you spend more time at the red lights. I decided I was going to just stay in traffic and chance it. Ended up being a little bit of traffic only in the last mile, and it wouldn't be as bad. It would have been smooth sailing just at 12 miles an hour if it weren't for all the four-wheelers jumping in front that would slam on their brakes and then jump in front, and including after you start to make the turn, they jump, they take it and they pull onto the not the curb, but they pull into the space on the side of the road, and then they sit there and wait until they have a gap, and then they accelerate real quick because they don't want to wait and get off on the exit ramp. And in a semi, you can't really be aggressive about it. I mean, I guess you could if you really want to. There's a lot of drivers that would, but I'm not going to. And so they'll just jump in front of me if they want to. That's fine. Whatever you want to do. Anyway. So, I got to my place, and I dropped off at the Lennox Industries, and it was fine. I got there, dropped off. I had about an hour and 45 minutes left, and I really was hoping for a pre-assignment so I could start heading out. But the office said, yeah, go ahead and find yourself a safe haven and shut down. Well, luckily at that exit there was a Love's, so I went ahead and stopped at that Love's for the night. And that allowed me to start my day. I had set my alarm to get up early at, what was it, like 7 p.m., something like that, and then head out by like 7:45 or something like that. I ended up waking up like 15 minutes before my alarm, and it was still dark, but I still got up, and it was cold enough that I could idle the truck. The truck will idle for a while and then shut down usually, because the temperature has been between 40 and 65. And I don't feel confident enough to release the parking brake and just leave the Kingpin hanging onto the trailer as my only connection, even though I could leave the trailer brake engaged. But I also know that that's probably going to take that camera, the front-facing camera, and it's going to go from blue, which is not technically in standby, to green, which is standby, and I didn't want to run the risk of having them say, wait a minute, why did you, when you were off duty, why were your trailer brakes released? So anyway, I dealt with it. Start by freezing myself in the trailer before, going to bed. I know I could turn on, like open up some of the windows in the back, but I don't want to do that. It's louder. There's trucks out there, or who knows if they're if they're just dieseling right outside my window. I don't want to smell that or whatever, even though my nose isn't great. I still want to deal with it. Anyway, so I went to bed, got up early this morning, and was assigned to go to TTI in Anderson, South Carolina, and that was in and out, no problem with batteries. It said in the app it was going to be like 41,000 pounds. It ended up being 22,000. So I was able to get out of there just fine and didn't even need to scale. So I stopped, fueled up at one of my favorite truck stops, Exit 160, even though they didn't have any DEF. And I pulled up and I did the fueling from the smart app. And then when I got out and tipped in the code, it did not let me, the pump would not start. So I was like, last time this happened, it did not let me fuel up again for like hours, because I was like, had barely half a tank that day. And I remember saying, okay, well, but this time, as opposed to last time where it gave me a little bit and then shut off after like 6 gallons and then wouldn't let me continue, this time it did not even activate the pump. So when I pushed the button back down and hung up the pump, had to change lanes, I was like, it's probably going to do the same crap again. But now I'm just over a quarter of a tank. It's going to be bad. And I really did not want to have to drop off my container in Austell, run over and fuel up in Austell at the Lithia Springs, because I prefer to get points at Pilot Flying J and then hit the road again. It ends up being that because the pump never really activated, shutting off and redoing it and putting a new code in there, it allowed me to fuel up, which was great. So anyway, I dropped off in Austell, picked up my container again. Here's something interesting. Twice this week it's had me picked up, and once was this morning, once was yesterday. It's had me pick up on the track side. Yesterday it was track side on track 3, which is when you pull into the Atlanta rail yard, you start to go over tracks. It starts at 6, then 5-4, then 3, and it's basically track side. So if it says like 3 TS or whatever TI, that's trackside inside. Trackside inside on that particular track. So if it says 3, that's by the side of the trackside 3. And that would be unless somebody else had to come by there and pick up a container, and the yard jockeys had to move something out so somebody could get a container, and then they're just gonna throw it someplace in one of the nearby like 6 or 7, A, B, C, D rows, 6, 7, whatever. And so I was trackside, and it ended up being the first all the way in the front and all the way on the outside. So I was able to grab my container yesterday. Today it ended up being running on trackside 3. It was on the outside, and it was all the way to the front. So I was like, awesome, pick that up. And I was assigned to go to Sonoma in Brazelton, and was told to put the trailer in a spot which I didn't realize until I got in there. It's designed for a 40-foot trailer. It's in a very tight lot. It's for 40-foot trailers, intermodals like the Maersks and other the Hapag Leonards and those. Not for a 53. So when they told me to go ahead and put it in there, I was like, okay, sure, no problem. And I was looking for it for a while, and then I realized where it was. It was a blind side back also, and it had other containers right in front. So luckily there was nothing. It was like in spot 265, and luckily 264 next to it, which they always want. They want you to move the tandems all the way to the back. So that means you're turning, is it going to be even worse? Luckily, even though it did take me a while, I was able to go kind of across 264 in order to try to get the right angle, but still it was so hard to get that angle. It took me almost 20 minutes getting into the spot. So, but I parked it there and I did my job, and then I realized I forgot to ask them for an empty location, but this has happened to be a location where they open up the backs of the empties and just leave them open. So when I dropped off my trailer, I looked and there was 2 empties right behind me. I checked it and I said, you know what, it's going to be great. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these 2 empties there. Grab the one that was in the better of the 2 conditions, which also happened to have self-inflating tires. I'm like, okay, I'm going to grab that one. I strongly endorse grabbing the self-inflated tires if that is something that, if you go around and you have the option of seeing the back of a trailer, if you can get one with self-inflated tires, I always like to. I personally like supporting the self-inflated tires for the company, as opposed to the old school, tires that you have to fill up if there's an issue. So anyway, they didn't care what the trailer, they just noted it, and since the back was open, I just had to close the trailer, and then I went straight back down and dropped in Austell. No, I take that back. It was they did not have assignment. They did not tell me to drop in Austell, so I literally parked it right there. In the Palmetto yard, quite often there is spaces, as long as there's no trucks barricading and blocking this. I'll show you real quick. There is trucks over there, like bobtails and stuff, and then there are containers all through here. And where that truck is right there was where I parked my container. And there's like another space like right there, and there's a car in that one over there. But normally these are barricaded by other bobtails or by someone that just pulls up a whole semi because they got lazy and didn't want to park in the other yard over there. So they just pull up with their tractor trailer combination and they block up some of this area. But and they're lazy, that's what they do. So they just park there. Anyway though, that was my week. It wasn't a bad week at all. Good mileage. And this is the first week in a long time, and I wonder if it's because I talked to my manager's last week about the loads, or if it was because I started at 10, or what, or if it was just a lucky week. But I got much happier loads that did not have appointment time at like 8 a.m. for a drop and hook, which I'm sure I could have gotten. They could have easily had me, drop by the Atlanta rail yard or one of these other rail yards and pick up at 5 and then go to a live load with one of those. But they were sending me on long runs. So hopefully this means that the planners are starting to get to know me and they realize they can give me long loads and I'll get there. Hopefully that continues to be a thing, because I would love it. Anyway, that was this week. I'm gonna call it there. This, like I said, if this were the week, if this were the way it was every single week, working for JB Hunt, it'd be fine. I'd like it. I keep seeing people posting. My Facebook obviously knows that I was looking for work because it's constantly full of, this trucking company is looking for drivers. This trucking company is looking for drivers. Almost all of them want you to go out for OTR for multiple weeks at a time. The lowest I've seen, it says we have multiple home options available, including some home dailies. Guess what? They're not available. And they probably wouldn't pay like I wanted to either. Or they'll say home weekly, but you contact them and they say, oh yeah, those are gone. We have out for 2 weeks, but you would shut down for a 34 somewhere on the road and then come back, and then you'll shut down for your 34 at home. I'm like, 34? And they're like, yeah, drop off and then you're home for your 34-hour reset and then you're back out. I'm like, JB Hunt allows me to work for 5 days and then be home for 2. I prefer that. And that's the kind of work I want to do. So that's the way it was at Martin. That's the way it is at JB Hunt. I like that. And so I'm not going to, unless I absolutely have to, go to another company again. Because personally, it is against my belief for you to go out over the road and be at the mercy of the planners, be at the mercy of whatever. You reset for 34 hours someplace over the road, and you work six days a week, or you just work rolling week after week after work with just a 34-hour reset, working nonstop every single day until you run hours like I did at Schneider. And you're at the mercy of the planners planning you, and you're at the mercy of whatever the company happens to send you. If it's local, doing small little drop and hooks, loads and whatever, you're not getting your miles in, or if it's a long haul or whatever, I don't know. What I do know is that it is very rough being over the road. And you deserve additional compensation if you're going to be over the road, because, and there's talk about this online, you are away from your family, you're away from your friends, you're away from your entire world, your support group, your computer, your television, if you have a home stereo, your friends, everything. You can't get out, you can't just take a truck and decide to go see a movie. You can't just take a truck and go to see your friends, and disconnect your trailer someplace. You can't do that. You are selling yourself. When you work for any company, you are selling yourself, your life, for a certain amount of money. You have to make a determination as to what that is worth, value-wise, and what you're willing to do for it. When you're in a truck and you're OTR, you live and work in this 8x8 foot space. You can almost refer that to a cell. You can say, well, 8x8 foot cell. It's not really a cell because you're working and you have freedom. But still, you're here for 168 hours a week. Isn't that what 24 times 7 is? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're living in this space. You're working in this space. You can't leave and do anything. You're at the mercy of eating whatever they have at truck stops, or paying outrageous fees if they happen to have a restaurant built in, because it's going to be, you're limited. And the few times I've done that, it's been more expensive. I'd rather you just use points if I want to grab food. Or grab stuff like I do at Costco and bring it into the truck and then sit there. When I was with Schneider, I went and bought a 20-pack of Hot Pockets and a whole bunch of other things and just loaded up my freezer with it and put some yogurts and stuff in my fridge. I don't have a fridge in this truck. I have my plastic bins there, but since they didn't give me a mini fridge, I'm not about to go out and spend money on buying one. I'm just going to I'll eat refrigerator food when I'm not working. And aside from that, I will just do what I'm doing. I'll live and eat out of the truck on meat sticks and whatever. So, meat sticks and nuts and dried fruit. And then I will eat properly when I'm off. Like later today, I will be able to eat. Actually, later today, we have a storm coming in 24 hours. So what I'm going to do is do all the stuff I need to do at my place. Then I'm going to go out and visit my family. So I'm there in case there's snow and that kind of thing. Anyway, that's what the game plan is for me. My manager gets here in 6 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and shut down now. Say thank you very much for watching. And I'll just, I'll see you in the next time when we're talking about the end of next week. Thanks for watching.